On a Friday afternoon in November of 2006, Keith Marsten fired the best mechanic in Grundy County, Iowa. He did it in the parking lot, in front of 3 customers, because Keith Marsten was the kind of man who believed that authority meant nothing if people didn't see you use it. The mechanic's name was Leon Dietrich. He was 54 years old. He'd worked at Marsten Implement, the John Deere dealership on Highway 20 outside Grundy Center, for 19 years. He'd started as a parts counter clerk in 1987 and had worked his way up to senior service technician, the highest paid hourly position in the shop. Leon could fix anything. Not just John Deere equipment. Anything with an engine, a hydraulic system, or a moving part. He had a gift, not for understanding machines in the theoretical way that engineers understand them, with formulas and specifications and tolerance charts, but in the physical way that musicians understand instruments. He could hear a problem. He could feel a misalignment through the vibration of a wrench handle. He could smell the difference between normal operating heat and a bearing that was about to fail. The customers knew this. The farmers who brought their equipment to Marsten Implement didn't ask for the dealership. They asked for Leon. Is Leon working today? That was always the first question. Keith Marsten hated that question. Keith was 41 years old and had inherited the dealership from his father, Howard, who had built it from nothing in 1968. Howard Marsten had been a mechanic himself, a grease under the fingernails, sweat on the brow, last one to leave kind of mechanic who understood that a dealership lives or dies on its service department. Keith was not his father. Keith had a business degree from the University of Northern Iowa. He wore pressed khakis and polo shirts with the John Deere logo embroidered on the chest. He spent his time in the front office, working on sales projections, dealer incentive programs, and marketing campaigns. He'd redesigned the showroom twice in 3 years, adding a coffee bar, a flat-screen TV, and a display area for John Deere merchandise hats, jackets, toy tractors, belt buckles. The showroom looked like a gift shop. The service department looked like it hadn't been painted since 1985. Keith's philosophy was simple: sell new equipment, push the warranty programs, move the financing packages. The money was in sales, not in service. Service was a cost center. Service was overhead. Every hour a mechanic spent fixing an old tractor was an hour that could have been spent selling a new one. He'd said this at a staff meeting once, in exactly those words, and Leon had sat in the back row and felt something shift inside him. The specific kind of shift that happens when you realize the person making decisions doesn't understand the business they're running. Keith had redesigned the showroom twice in 3 years, adding a coffee bar with a commercial espresso machine, a flat-screen TV that played John Deere promotional videos on a loop, and a display area for John Deere merchandise hats, jackets, toy tractors, belt buckles, coffee mugs, keychains, Kodu, Koshun, even a $45 John Deere waffle maker that made waffles in the shape of a leaping deer. The showroom looked like a gift shop at a theme park. The service department looked like it hadn't been painted since 1985, which it hadn't. Keith had cut the service department's tool budget by 40% in 2004. Leon needed a new torque multiplier for the large frame tractor hub nuts. It cost $800. Keith said no. Leon bought it himself, with his own money, because the alternative was watching a farmer wait an extra day for a wheel bearing job while they ordered the right tool from Des Moines. Keith had also eliminated the after-hours service phone. Howard Marsten had given Leon a company cell phone in 1996 and told him to answer it any time a farmer called, day or night, 365 days a year. Keith canceled the phone in 2005 and told farmers to call during business hours. Leon gave the farmers his personal cell number. He paid for it himself. He answered it at midnight during planting and at 4 a.m. during harvest, because that's what Howard would have done and what was right and what the farmers needed. Leon's philosophy was different. Leon believed that a dealership existed to keep farmers farming, not to sell them things they didn't need, not to push financing they couldn't afford, not to void warranties on technicalities, to keep their equipment running so they could feed their families. The conflict had been building for years, but it came to a head on the 17th of November, 2006, over a hydraulic pump. A farmer named Harold Voss had brought in his 2004 John Deere 8320, a 200 horsepower row crop tractor with 3,200 hours on it. The hydraulic pump was leaking, not catastrophically, but steadily a slow drip that was getting worse and would eventually fail completely if it wasn't addressed. The tractor was still under the extended warranty. The pump should have been covered. Keith denied the warranty claim. His reasoning: Harold had used an aftermarket hydraulic filter at his last service interval instead of a genuine John Deere filter. The filter was manufactured by Donaldson, the same company that actually made the John Deere branded filters. The same specifications, the same materials, the same performance, but it didn't have the John Deere logo on it. And the warranty terms, buried in paragraph 14 of the two-page warranty agreement, stated that the use of non-genuine parts could void coverage at the dealer's discretion. Leon had examined the pump. The leak was caused by a manufacturing defect in the pump housing a hairline crack in the casting that had nothing to do with the filter, the oil, or anything Harold had done. Leon had written a service report documenting the defect and recommending warranty coverage. Keith overruled him. The repair would cost Harold $4,200 out of pocket. For a defect that wasn't his fault, on a tractor that was still under warranty, denied because of a filter that was identical in every way to the one Keith wanted him to use except for the logo. Leon went to Keith's office. He closed the door. He was calm. He was always calm. 19 years of dealing with Keith's father, and then Keith had taught him that losing your temper in a dealership was like losing your wrench in an engine bay. It only made the problem worse. "Keith," he said, "that pump has a casting defect. I can see it. I photographed it. The filter has nothing to do with it. We need to cover this under warranty." Keith didn't look up from his computer. "The warranty terms are clear," Keith said. "Non-genuine parts void coverage. If Harold wants to save $3 on a filter, he can pay $4,200 for a pump. That's his choice." Leon was quiet for a moment. "Keith," he said, "Harold Voss has bought 4 tractors from this dealership. His father bought tractors from your father. He's been a customer for 35 years. We're going to lose him over a filter that didn't cause the problem." Keith looked up. "Leon," he said, "I run the business side. You run the wrench side. Stay in your lane." Leon walked out of the office. He went to the service bay. He looked at Harold's tractor. He looked at the pump with the crack in the housing. He looked at the service report he'd written. Then he called Harold. "Harold," he said, "your pump has a casting defect. The warranty should cover it. Keith denied the claim because of your filter. I think he's wrong. I think you should call John Deere Corporate and file a warranty dispute." Leon knew what would happen when Keith found out. He made the call anyway. Harold called John Deere Corporate. A regional warranty manager reviewed the claim and the photographs in Leon's service report. 3 days later, the warranty manager overruled Keith and approved the repair. Keith was humiliated. A corporate rep had reversed his decision. In his own dealership, because his own mechanic had gone over his head. That Friday, Keith walked into the service bay at 4:30 p.m. Leon was finishing a transmission rebuild on a 7,820. 3 customers were in the waiting area, drinking coffee from the machine that Leon had bought with his own money because Keith wouldn't replace the broken one. Keith stood in the bay door and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Leon, you're done. Pack your tools. I want you out by 5. Leon didn't argue. He put down his wrench, wiped his hands on a shop rag, and started loading his toolbox. It took him 2 trips with a hand truck. The toolbox weighed 800 pounds and contained 19 years of accumulated tools, many of them specialty items he'd bought himself because the dealership wouldn't. The 3 customers in the waiting area watched in silence. 2 of them were Harold Voss's neighbors. By Monday morning, everyone in Grundy County knew. Leon didn't look for another dealership job. He was 54 years old and tired of working for people who didn't understand what they were selling. He opened his own shop. It was a 30 by 40 pole building on 2 acres he bought from a retired farmer on the south side of Grundy Center. He built the workbenches himself. He poured the concrete floor himself. He wired the lights himself. He hung a hand-painted sign on the road that said, "Dietrich, repair if it runs. I can fix it." No John Deere logo. No brand affiliation. No coffee bar. No merchandise display. Just tools, a lift, a parts washer, and a man who could hear what was wrong with your engine before you finished describing the symptoms. The customers came, not all at once, not in a flood, one by one. The farmers who had always asked, "Is Leon working today?" started asking a different question. "Where's Leon's shop?" Harold Voss was first. He brought his 8,320 for its next service and never went back to Marsten. Within a year, Leon had more work than he could handle alone. He hired a young mechanic named Tyler, fresh out of the community college diesel program, and taught him the way Howard Marsten had taught Leon, by feel, by sound, by the patience that comes from caring about the machine you're working on. Within 3 years, Dietrich Repair was servicing over 200 farm accounts across 3 counties. Leon's labor rate was $65 per hour, half of what Marsten charged. His parts markup was 15%, a third of what Marsten charged. And his comeback rate, the percentage of repairs that had to be redone, was less than 2%. Marsten's was 11%. Keith Marsten noticed. He noticed because his service revenue dropped 40% between 2007 and 2010. He noticed because farmers who had bought 3 generations of John Deere equipment from his family were buying from other dealers. Dealers in Waterloo, in Cedar Falls, in Iowa Falls, because they didn't want to give Keith their money and they didn't want to use his service department. Keith didn't understand. He'd invested in the showroom. He'd upgraded the coffee bar. He'd hired a marketing consultant who suggested a customer appreciation barbecue every July with John Deere merchandise giveaways. Nobody came. Then the crisis hit. In March of 2013, the right to repair movement reached Grundy County. John Deere's newer tractors, the ones with computerized engine controls, GPS systems, and proprietary diagnostic software, could only be serviced by authorized dealers. If a farmer's tractor broke down during planting season, he couldn't fix it himself. He couldn't take it to Leon. He had to call the dealer and wait for a technician who might not be available for days. The farmers were furious. Planting season waits for no one. Every day a tractor sits idle in April, costs hundreds of dollars per acre in delayed planting. Keith saw an opportunity. He raised his emergency service rate to $150 per hour, with a 4-hour minimum. If you wanted your tractor fixed during planting season, you paid Keith's price. There was nowhere else to go. Except there was. Leon couldn't legally access the John Deere diagnostic software. But Leon didn't need software. Leon had 30 years of experience. He could diagnose a fuel injection problem by listening to the engine. He could identify a sensor fault by the pattern of the error codes. He could bypass a software lock by understanding the underlying mechanical system that the software was supposed to control. Word spread. Farmers started bringing their locked-out tractors to Leon, not for software updates, for mechanical solutions that didn't require software. Workarounds. Repairs that addressed the root cause instead of the error code. Keith found out. He called John Deere corporate and reported Leon for unauthorized service on John Deere equipment. The corporate response was not what Keith expected. A regional manager named Patricia Soto flew to Grundy Center from Moline. She met with Keith in his office. She also met with Leon in his shop. She also met with 15 farmers who had filed complaints not against Leon, against Keith. The complaints were detailed and consistent. Warranty denials on technicalities, inflated labor rates, unnecessary repairs, parts upcharges, emergency service gouging during planting season. Patricia Soto was a 5-year John Deere veteran. She had started in the parts department of a dealer in Peoria and worked her way up to regional management. She understood dealerships. She understood mechanics. She understood farmers. She understood that Keith Marsten was destroying the John Deere brand in Grundy County one customer at a time. The meeting was private. What was said behind Keith's office door has never been made public, but the results were visible. Keith's dealer agreement was placed on probation. His warranty denial rate was flagged for review. His labor rates were benchmarked against regional averages and found to be 35% above the norm. And Patricia Soto made a suggestion that Keith couldn't refuse. "Hire Leon back," she said, "or lose the franchise." Keith called Leon that evening. The conversation was short. "I need you to come back," Keith said. The words sounded like they were being pulled out of him with pliers. Leon was quiet for a moment. He was in his shop, finishing a clutch rebuild on a 1970 Farmall 856, a tractor that was older than Keith and still working because someone had cared for it. "Keith," Leon said, "I'm not coming back to work for you. I left that behind 7 years ago and I'm not going back." Keith was desperate. The franchise was everything. The building, the inventory, the name on the sign, it was all he had. "What if you didn't work for me?" Keith said. What if we were partners?" There was a long silence on the line. Leon could have said no. He had every reason to. 7 years of building his own business. 7 years of independence. 7 years of not answering to a man who valued logo placement over mechanical integrity. But Leon thought about Howard Marsten, Keith's father, the man who had hired Leon in 1987, trained him, trusted him, and died believing his son would carry on what he'd built. Leon thought about the 200 accounts he served, the farmers who needed a dealership that worked right, not just a man in a pole building. He thought about something Howard had told him once, years ago, when a customer had been particularly difficult. "The easy thing is to walk away. The hard thing is to stay and fix it. And Leon, we fix things. That's what we do." "Okay," Leon said, "but I run the service department. No interference, no warranty games, no parts upcharges. And every mechanic in that shop answers to me, not to you." Keith agreed. He had no choice. Leon sold his shop, the pole building, the tools, the sign to Tyler, his protege, who renamed it and continues to operate it today. Leon went back to Marsten Implement on the 2nd of January 2014, not as an employee, as a partner. His name went on the sign, Marsten and Dietrich Implement. He rebuilt the service department from the ground up. He repainted the shop. He hired 3 mechanics and trained them the way Howard had trained him. He instituted a warranty policy that was fair and transparent. If the defect wasn't caused by the customer, it was covered, period. The customers came back. Not all of them. Not right away. Trust, once broken, heals slowly. But within 2 years, the service revenue had doubled. Within 4 years, the dealership was the top-performing small dealer in the region. Keith Marsten learned something. It took him 7 years of losing customers, 1 corporate ultimatum, and the humiliation of asking the man he'd fired in a parking lot to save his business. But he learned it. The business isn't the showroom. The business isn't the logo. The business isn't the coffee bar or the merchandise display or the marketing campaign. The business is the man with the wrench who answers the phone at 1:00 p.m. during planting season and says, "I'll be there in 20 minutes." The business is Leon. Keith retired in 2021. He sold his share of the dealership to Leon. The sign now reads, "Dietrich Implement." The showroom is smaller. The coffee bar is gone. The service department has 6 bays, all full. Leon is 72 years old. He still works 3 days a week. He still listens to engines. He still feels misalignments through the vibration of a wrench handle. And when a farmer walks in and asks, "Is Leon working today?" the answer is the same as it's been for 37 years. Yes, Leon is always working,